Hello everybody, welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be doing a quick video that explains why Enchanter itemization is so strong in League of Legends. So if you enjoy this content, please be sure to like and subscribe. It really helps out a ton on the channel. Be sure to check out the stream as well. We stream on YouTube every night starting around 11 p.m., usually going till about 4 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll have a link at the end of this video if you want to click on that, check it out. Also save the replays on YouTube, so if you can't catch it live, I put the timestamps in the next day, so you can just kind of look in the description or look at the top pinned comment and just see which champions I played at which times and just skip around to those. So it's really cool. Come check it out. Very friendly, chill community. I try to explain as much as I can about my thought process during the game, some of the decisions I'm making, you know, analyzing some of what the enemy's doing, some of what my allies are doing, and then just try to have fun conversations with the chat as well about any random comments that people want to talk about. So be sure to check all that out. We do other guides like this as well. I'll have a link to that at the end of the video as well, so be sure to check that out. We have best one-trick video, dodging guides, individual champion guides, tier lists, patch notes, all sorts of stuff we're constantly adding, so be sure to check all that out. Okay, let's go ahead and get in here. Alright, so itemization is something that a lot of people don't really understand very well, and it is one of the main things that makes supports, particularly Enchanter supports, really strong, and it's a form of hidden power. It just really adds a lot of extra effectiveness to your team while not seeming all of that impactful. Right, and I'll have a link as well at the end. I forgot to mention this, but I'll have a link to how to carry a support, some of the most underrated aspects of support in solo queue, and how to climb to support. And just as a disclaimer, as of the making of this video, I am a D4 support main on the NA server. Okay, so let's talk about this real quick. So first of all, to understand itemization and why it's so strong, and you see people mess up items all the time, which is the main reason that I want to make this video as well. You'll see enchanters or other types of supports just getting really goofy stuff that's not that good. So like Sona is an example of this, and I debate with people all the time on the stream whether or not they should go tier Sona or Lichbane Sona, and I always say you should be going things like Ardent Censer, like Athene's, and I'm going to go into that and more as the video progresses here. But you got to understand the relative value of stats. So I've got a link to the wiki here, and I'll have this Google Doc linked as well in the description if you just want to kind of flip through and click on some of these links yourself. But the wiki will break down the value of each stat, and it puts a gold number assigned. So for example, 1 HP is about 2.66 gold, 1 armor is 20 gold, 1 magic resist 18 gold, 1 mana 1.4, and so on and so forth. You can just kind of see those here. And so some, you know, items will have better just baseline stats that you can calculate out. And for each individual item, it also will tell you the cost analysis of the item. So like right here, it tells you that Mikhail's Crucible is worth 20 gold based on all of these values. So it spells it out for you on the wiki really well. You don't even have to do any math. But just so you understand how stuff is weighted there, then it's got it, right? And then it'll tell you right here, this is such and such gold efficient, without the passives and without the actives usually, and then it moves on from there. Okay, so I'm going to tell you just how much some of these actives and passives are going to be worth that it has a hard time calculating. But if you want the baseline numbers, just go through and check all that out. But that's just how relative gold value works, and we'll talk about relative value here in just a little bit. Now, how resistances work. This is one thing that is sort of mysterious for a lot of people. They know that you build armor versus physical damage, you build magic resist versus magic damage, but how does that actually work? There is a complicated formula for it. I've got the wiki linked here, but the easiest way to think about it is that each 1 armor that you have means that it's going to take 1% more physical damage to kill you, to do that effective HP, and then each 1 magic resist that you have means that it's going to take 1% more magic damage to kill you. Okay, so here's a simple example. If you have 1,000 health and no armor, then it's going to take 1,000 physical damage to kill you. But if you have 1,000 HP and 100 armor, it's going to take 2,000 physical damage to kill you. So 100 armor mathematically is going to reduce your all incoming physical damage by 50%. So it's going to take 2,000 damage. So it's kind of a common misnomer that people say you can have too much armor or too much magic resist and that it's less effective or falls off. Percentage-wise, that's what it'll look like, but it's still the same as always true. If you have 1,000 armor, for example, and 1,000 HP, it's going to take 10,000 damage to kill you, right? So percentage-wise, it's not going to look as impressive as you get more and more armor, but it's going to be the same thing always. 1% more damage for each one armor that you have. Okay, now the reason that this is kind of true, and we'll talk about that, I've got a couple of examples for you here in a second, is there's only so many items that are just efficient, good, well-rounded items that you want, that are going to be armor items or magic resist items. So, and sometimes it's better to get health on a cost basis than it is to get more armor, because health also increases your effective HP. So, for example, you might be better off getting something with health and armor like a Randuin's rather than just stacking all chain vests, for example, or buying like all frozen hearts or something like that. So, but that's how resistances work. Now, shields and healing scale with resistances, and that's part of why enchanters are so strong, particularly shielding enchanters. If Janna shields you for 300, for example, and you have a 100 armor, it's going to take 600 physical damage to break that shield. A lot of people don't realize that. So shields can look very unassuming. Oh, that's only a 300 shield, but they're incredibly difficult to break. A lot of other games out there, shields will do, or people do true damage to shields. That's not the case in League of Legends. Shields do benefit from armor. They do benefit from magic resist and any other kind of damage reduction that the person has on them. So if it's something like Alistar, and he's got 70% damage reduction, and you shield him with Janna for 300, then that the shield's gonna take that into account when it does it. Okay. So an example here with a heal, if Nami heals you for 200, you have 100 armor, it's going to take 400 physical damage to remove that HP. Okay, so that's pretty obvious, but the shield one is one that people don't think about that much. Conversely, if you have a physical damage support or a magic damage support, or does any other champ in the game that does damage, then it scales against resistances. So resistances are bad. So if you deal 300 damage with Zyra, and the enemy has 100 magic resist, you're actually only dealing 150 damage. So you're, working uphill with that. So in some ways, and this is, a lot of assumptions, but an okay sort of murky way to think of it is that healing and shielding can be up to 4 times as effective as damage against the target with the same resistances. So in other words, if with that Janna example, if you shield an ally who has 100 magic resist, it's going to take 600 magic damage to break that shield. Okay, so 600 effective shield there. However, if you're Zyra and you're trying to do the same 300 damage, instead of a 300 shield, you're doing 300 damage to someone who has 100 magic resist, it's only going to equate to 150 damage. So that's where you think of, okay, you're only doing 150 damage versus a 600 shield for the same amount of shielding versus damage. Then the shield is going to be 4 times the value of the damage. 4 times 150 is 600, okay? So that means shielding is extremely powerful, okay? So that's kind of the baseline, why enchanters are so strong, and why a lot of people don't think of it is because they just don't understand how resistances work. So healing and shielding scales harder than damage because it works with resistances. And there are some other factors that go into play with that as well, but we'll get into that here in just a little bit. Okay, it also affects your effective HP against targets. So if you look at cost analysis, and I've got a couple of it here. Let's say that you have, you want 1,000 HP. Based on the cost up there, that would cost you about $26.66 to purchase 1,000 HP in League of Legends if it's at 100% efficiency. If you want to purchase 100 armor, then that's going to cost you 2,000 gold. So the total gold for that would be 4,666. So that would give you 200 effective health, or 2,000 effective health against physical damage against AD, right? So it's actually saving you a little bit of money in this scenario. Versus it's only going to give you 1,000 effective HP against magic damage because your armor's not going to do anything. So this is a bargain, right? Because if you were to just buy 2,000 flat HP, just straight up your health stacking, not including any other scaling that's built into the kit of your champion, if you're just buying 2,000 health that's going to be good against armor and magic resist, that would cost you 53.32 gold, right? So this is why it's so important to think about team comps when you're itemizing resistances, because if they have all physical damage, armor stacking is extremely strong. It's better than health stacking in a lot of cases because you're getting this bargain, right? You're getting the 4666. Now, obviously, it's going to depend on their itemization. If they have a bunch of armor shred stuff, if they have like a Jarvan or a Wukong who shreds percentage armor, and they've got Last Whisper and all that kind of stuff, that can change the calculus. Or if they have stuff that does percentage health damage, or true damage that's going to bypass armor, all of that obviously is going to come into account. But this is just why it's good to get a mix of health and a resistance, because when you combine those, then you can get a pretty good bargain if you're able to figure that out. And I'm not going to do that for individual champions too much here, right? I'm just telling you that's how it works. Okay? So that's a very good bargain versus physical damage, but a terrible bargain versus AP damage, because you're only getting 2,000 gold worth of defense there, effectively. So you need to think about the threats carefully. And as you're doing that, you want to make sure that you're not just thinking numbers, right? Like, okay, they have 3 AP and 1 AD, therefore I get all magic resist. Unfortunately, if that 1 AD is something like a Twitch, and he's 12-0, and everyone else is like 1-0, then you might need to stack a bunch of armor, even though there's only one threat of that type on the team. And that sucks when that happens, but sometimes that happens. A much more common scenario is the enemy team might have like a support that's like an Enchanter or something, then they have 3 AD, they got an AD top, AD jungle, AD bottom, and then their mid laner is magic damage, but it's something that's like really scary and like super fed. So it's like a Cassiopeia that's 12-0 or something like that, and you're a tank, you probably have to buy magic resist. Okay. So also when you're itemizing, you want to be thinking about understanding the game state, so be ready to adapt. So for example, don't consider not buying Ardent Censer if your ADC is really far behind, particularly if you don't have anyone else that benefits from it that much, and consider getting a Mikhail's on a champ, even if it's not common on that champ, if it's an Enchanter, if they keep CCing your assassin. So for example, if you have a really fed Katarina and they have a lot of CC, maybe they have a Lissandra in the mid lane and your cat's really fed, you want to help protect your Lissandra, maybe most of the time on Janna you would go for something like Athene's Unholy Grail and Ardent Censer, but maybe you want to go Athene's into Mikhail's, even though they have a little bit of non-synergy there, just to protect your Katarina. So you always want to be adapting your build and thinking about what's going on. And be sure to alter your build. Throw in some resistances if it makes sense. So, for example, if the enemy has a Talon that's 7-1 at 10 minutes into the game, you might need to get Ninja Tabbies on Lulu. Even though that's weird, usually you'd want to go Swiftness or Ionians. You just need to make a call and say, hey, I need some more resistances here. Because they have this really fed assassin that is probably going to kill me. Okay. And you got to think about your back timings too. I talk about this a lot in individual guides and on the stream, but sometimes you have to adjust, right? Like maybe the perfect buy for this situation would be, to complete an amp tome on your first back so that you can apply more pressure, but maybe you only get to back with 300 gold or like 325 or something like that. You don't want to sit there and just go back to lane with 325 gold that you're not using most of the time. You might have to get a couple of fairy charms and a control ward, or you might have to get some boots or something like that. Now, enchanters are really strong because they can do that a lot of the times. They have very modular items and they can mix and match. So if they back, they can buy fairy charms, amp tomes, boots, complete, some of their mid-tier items like Forbidden Idols or Ether Wisp and things like that. They complete all that for, somewhere between 400 to 600 gold depending on the item, which is really nice. You have very flexible back timings versus AP champions a lot of times like Zyra, or if you're going AP on Lux, Brand, Vel'Koz, Xerath, all that stuff, they're going to have to buy more expensive items, right? They're going to have to get blasting wands. Their items are going to cost more to finish. And so that can suck. And even sometimes on tanks, most tanks have pretty good itemization choices. And this is why you don't want to build stuff often. Things like Randuins, things like Deadmans and stuff like that are really hard to build. Things like Righteous Glory are really hard to build on certain tanks because it's just so expensive. It's like 1,100 to finish Righteous Glory. I think it's about 1,100 to finish Deadmans. You have to buy... sometimes it can be expensive to get a chain vest. Sometimes it can be expensive to get some of these different components. Stuff like the Giant's Belt and stuff like that, requires 600 to complete. So that just means that you have really good back timings as an enchanter, so you're free to go back and get your wards and not have to be inefficient with your buys. So that is a huge perk of enchanter itemization, is that they have more flexible back timing. So just make sure that you're taking advantage of that. Okay, so now we're getting into why enchanters specifically are really strong. Now that you understand some of like what makes itemization strong, how resistances work, how does that fit into enchanters specifically? Well, gold efficiency is the biggest thing. A lot of enchanter items are very cheap. You'll notice that Ardent Censor's 2300, Athene's 21, Redemption 21, Shurelya's 2050, Mikhail's 2100. So that just means that you're going to be able to hit these power spikes a lot faster. You know, while the enemy support might be waiting to complete Leandries, or they might be waiting to complete even something like Gargoyle Stoneplate, this 2100 gold, you're going to have better back timing. So that means that you might be able to finish your redemption while they're still waiting on 400 gold for that next dragon fight, or for the Rift Herald fight, or for this key fight. You already took down bot tower, and you're trying to make a push mid to snowball harder with your Caitlyn. You know, you're just going to be in a much better position to hit these power spikes faster and be much more impactful in team fights earlier on in the game because you have cheaper items. And on top of that, these items give you a lot of value, and I'm going to go through a few of them here in just a second. But for example, like a 2100 gold item, and a lot of them are about 2100 gold that we just mentioned, that has 200% efficiency, which is very common on these items, is going to end up giving you plus 4200 gold for your team in effective power. So getting that plus 2100 gold because you're going from 100% efficiency to 200% is about equal to 7 kills that don't have assists on them. Maybe, you know, closer to 3 or 4 kills that are assisted. And that's still a very big deal. So whenever you complete something like a redemption, instead of completing, you know, like a 100% gold efficient item, then effectively it's like you're giving your team a pentakill, you know, a pentakill plus in some circumstances. So it's very, very strong. So don't, you know, it can be very unassuming, right? You see a Janna, you know, she's got Redemption, she's got Ardent Censor, she's got Athene's Unholy Grail, and you're just thinking, wow, she's got 3 items. But in effect, it's almost like she has 6 items, because each one of those is going to be about the same efficiency as several of the tank items that are only going to be, you know, between 100 to 150% efficient. So, you know, that's why enchanters can be a lot stronger than they seem just from a gold efficiency standpoint. And that's not even taking into account the scaling and how shielding works with some of these stats. The stat plus healing and shielding, specifically how it scales. We talked about that a little bit earlier, how it works with resistances, but just how it works with AP combined with a base number combined with resistances really gets pretty insane. So I've got an example here for you. So let's say, you know, when you're adding this up, you want to think about what's the base shield or what's the base heal. Then you want to think about what is the what's the AP ratio, right? You add the AP ratio, the amount of AP that you get after the ratio. Then you add on, you multiply it times the plus healing and shielding, and then you multiply it times Revitalize if you have that, which is just pretty much a must with every enchanter build. And then you have that multiplied with resistances to give the effective HP that your shield's going to provide. So if you take a 240 shield, so like a Janna shield or a Lulu shield, say that you have a 0.7 ratio on it, so like Janna's ratio 0.7, you have 100 AP, which is extremely easy to get to. That's like basically one item, either Athene's or Ardent Censor, plus runes, all that kind of stuff. We'll just say 100 AP, just for easy math. That's plus 70, so that's going to give you 310. Then you multiply that times 1.2. Let's say that you have plus 20% plus healing and shielding, right? So you have completed Ardent Censor, and then you also have Forbidden Idol for your next item. And you also have Revitalize, so that'd really be plus 1.25. We're just taking easy round numbers here. 20% plus healing and shielding. And then, add Revitalize in next. Scratch that. So plus 1.15 from Revitalize. And then let's say that you are shielding a target that just has 100 armor. Pretty simple number, kind of a mid-game, bruiser, tank, whatever. That's going to be 744 effective HP. So that shield that only looks like 240 now is 744 because of how all of these multiply and stack together. So these are pretty conservative numbers, you know, in the early to mid-game. It's very easy to have a lot more AP. It's easier to have more plus healing and shielding. You might run into some tanks, you know, that have more than, you know, 100 effective armor. And this doesn't include stuff like Spirit Visage as well. Multiply this by an additional 30% if this is a heal and it's on a Spirit Visage champion. That's why Soraka is so strong. Be sure to check out my support tier list. I release every patch. I talk about Soraka a lot because she's really, really good in a tank meta, which we're kind of shifting into right now, a bruisery tank kind of meta, as of making this video. But anyways, Very, very strong. So that's the thing that a lot of people forget is this stuff stacks with each other, right? It's not just additive, it's multiplicative, right? You have the additive, the AP plus the base, but then it's multiplied by your plus healing and shielding, multiplied by the resistances, multiplied by Spirit Visage, any other, stuff they have that's going to give them increased healing and shielding. If they have Font of Life, which a lot, if they have Revitalize, which a lot of these kind of healing champs will have, your Zax, your Mundos, it's a lot. I think Warwick, I don't remember if Warwick takes it or not, but there will be a lot of champs, if they have their own healing, that might end up taking Revitalize themselves. Revitalize can stack twice. It stacks for you with the outgoing healing and shielding, but it also stacks for the person receiving the healing and shielding. So that can be even more. So there's just tons and tons of stuff that adds a lot of extra healing and shielding out there. Okay, so that's the number one thing to understand. So when you're in a meta where there's going to be people that are buying more resists and they're going to have more healing and shielding, which we're in that meta. You've got Conquer, you've got Triumph, you've got Bloodline, Ravenous Hunter, Taste of Blood, just champs like Kane, champs like Aatrox. There's just a lot of stuff out there that just has a crazy amount of healing in the meta right now. People buying Blade of the Ruined King, people buying Death's Dance. There's just an insane amount of healing out there right now, and it's really good with that because that means they stay up longer. That's more effective health. So when you have resistances plus someone like Kane or Aatrox that's also going to have a lot of plus healing and shielding built into their kit, they're surviving longer. That means you're getting more shields off, and just that efficiency is going to snowball in power over and over again, and it's just going to overwhelm damage champs because they just can't keep up. They're just not going to have as much efficiency. So if they're not blowing up someone immediately, if the fight goes for longer than 5 seconds, then it's going to be lights out against an Enchanter support. So how do some of these items stack up then? Which ones should you be looking at in different situations? Well, Ardent Censer is classically one of the best, especially if you have an attack speed AD carry or anyone else that's going to really leverage that attack speed well. So like an Ardent Censer, a Kindred, any of these other like heavy attack speed auto attack champions that are in the meta. Even some other champs that just have just auto attack people sometimes, right? Like you've got your Sets, you've got your Dariuses, your Gareds. They're still going to get pretty good benefit out of it. The Ardent Censer is classically one of the best, and the reason is you can spread this buff to everyone consistently a lot, especially if you take Font of Life, and it just has so much value built into it. So if we're just looking at the value itself without even considering the passive on it, it's already 2,700% efficient, right? So it's already 118% baseline, even if you never shield or heal anybody, right? But then each person that you heal or shield, or if you just do that to one person at the lowest value possible, right? Just 5 on hit and 10% attack speed, then it's going to end up giving you 3450 gold. So the lowest baseline, if you put a heal or a shield on someone, is 150. And as you scale up, so as you get to like level 11 or something like that, level 10, level 11, then it's going to be over 200% right there, simple. Now this is where it starts to get really nutty though. At the max value, when you're healing a single person, or let me see here, yeah, buff at level 18. Okay, so that's the max value, 199 to 389. It just goes up and up and up. I mean, basically each person that you're able to heal or shield here in the mid game is going to give you about 600 or 700 extra value. So when there's like 4 people on your team, 3 or 4 people in a team fight able to use this, then you're easily going to be getting up to sometimes even 300, maybe even closer to 400% efficiency, which is just nuts. Like, it's so much value that you're getting. And if you have other champs that increase attack speed, like Lulu's most famous for this, she adds on picks, which is an extra on attack, ton of damage, almost like 80 on hit damage on picks. It doesn't work with Hurricane, doesn't work with Ginsu's, but it's a lot of extra on hit damage. And she personally gives a lot of attack speed and personally gives a lot of on hit damage. Yumi is the same thing, gives a lot of extra attack speed with her E. Janna gives a lot of extra AD, which scales with attack speed and all that stuff. It just works so well with so many kits. It's so cost efficient. It's just nuts. And you can trigger this in ways that people may not always think of. So a targeted ability will trigger Ardent Censer. So this can be stuff that doesn't even necessarily heal or shield if you have Airy. So if you target someone with Lulu's W, for example, you target them with W, it's not a shield or a heal technically, but it targets somebody and it puts Airy on them, which is a shield, and that Airy will trigger Ardent Censer. So you can W your AD carry first, for example, to give them the attack speed, and then you can shield your tank if you want to use the distribute your skills that way. Or someone like Nami, for example, you can use your E on somebody to empower the auto attacks, technically not a shield or a heal, but then it puts Airy on them, that will make it into a shield, that will trigger Ardent Censer. So there are lots of situations where you can get Ardent Censer on multiple people like that. Sona's Aura, you know, is going to put a small shield on everybody that it touches. That gives everyone Ardent Censer. Locket, Redemption, that can heal or shield everybody. That triggers it. And then this is one of the most powerful ones that people don't think of a lot. And this is really common right now in the current meta because Guardian is so strong. And you're seeing lots of enchanters still take Guardian, even though it got nerfed a couple of patches ago. It's still really good. Is that if you slow somebody, if you have Font of Life and you slow somebody, then anyone that auto attacks that person is going to get a heal, and that heal is going to trigger Ardent Censer. So even if you're playing someone who's thought of as single target, like Lulu, for example, and you might think, well, I can't really put Ardent Censer on a lot of people as Lulu. If you have Font of Life and you Q somebody, it applies a slow to them, and then your whole team auto attacks that person, it will put Ardent Censer on your whole team. So you can get it on people like Janna, same thing. You're thinking, oh, I've only got one single target shield. How am I going to get Ardent Censer on everybody? You take Font of Life, you W them, puts the slow, everyone auto attacks, triggers Ardent Censer on everybody. So Font of Life is very unassuming. It doesn't usually put up big numbers. You know, you might get like 400, 500 healing in a lot of games, but the fact that it puts Ardent Censer on everybody adds a tremendous amount of value. So that's why it's so common to see, you know, Font of Life plus something like Revitalize on a lot of enchanters, because it just works so well with Ardent Censer and the plus healing and shielding. So that's very good. And a nice thing about Ardent Censer as well is there's no activation, there's no internal cooldown. It just always works. You can have it up constantly. So it just adds a tremendous amount of value. So you're easily getting 200%. And in a lot of scenarios, if you have Font of Life, if you have a slow, which is most enchanters, then same thing with Karma. You Q somebody, you hit them, slow, attack, Font of Life, whole team gets it. Then you're easily getting over 300% in a lot of scenarios. So these numbers are actually pretty conservative on just how efficient this is. If you get to 300%, it's like you're giving your team 14 kills. So, yeah. It's really good. Okay, Athene's Unholy Grail is the other one that's very common to rush. So, Ardent Censer is very nice early on. It doesn't give you as much AP early on in your build a lot of times as Athene's does, but it is very, very nice. A lot of people like to rush Athene's, which is similarly very, very efficient. So Athene's is a bit harder to understand. 35% pre-mitigation damage means how much damage are you doing before factoring in magic resist and armor. So not how much damage you're actually doing, but how much would you do in theory if they had no armor or no magic resist. So it's even better than it seems. So for example, if you just do, let's say that you have a shield, you know, it's on an 8-second cooldown like a Lulu or like, you know, Janna, if you've applied a little bit of CC, Karma, 8 seconds is about where a lot of shields are coming in these days. And then even if you have some CDR, let's say 5 seconds. Well, in that 5 seconds, if you just land, you know, one spell on somebody and just land some auto attacks, like let's say you land 3 auto attacks, you know, a simple spell on somebody, you're easily going to be able to get to 300 damage every 5 or 6 seconds in a fight. Right? And what this does, it'll store up to so many charges. So if you get to, you know, level 9 or whatever, it can store up to 170 charges. Right? But I'm just saying, we're just going to say every time you have a shield, you just get 100 charges. Okay? So you're getting 100 extra healing. Well, how much is that 100 healing actually worth in terms of value? Because if we look at the rest of the value, it's pretty good. It's like 2,400 gold baseline value. But if you have a 200 shield, and you're getting 100 extra healing added to that shield, then that is about equivalent to plus 50% healing and shielding as far as the SAT goes. And that would be about 1,750 gold. So that's going to give you well north of, it's going to give you about 4,200 gold. So once again, not exact equivalents, but it is, you know, and it's not, if you have, plus healing and shielding is going to be a lot stronger in some circumstances because that scales with redemption. If you have lots of AoE healing, you're healing for thousands and thousands with like a Janna R or a Soraka ult or whatever. Yeah, in those scenarios, it's not going to be exactly equivalent to plus 50% healing and shielding. But I'm just giving you very simple, you're casting one shield every 5 or 6 seconds or something like that. You're getting 100 extra healing out of it. And then once again, if you're doing a lot more damage, if you're playing something like Sona and you can regularly do like 250 damage every time this comes in, then you're going to be getting, more and more value if you can store 250. So if you're doing like 500 to 750 damage, you're doing Lichbane, Sona, or something like that, and you have Athene's Unholy Grail, or Karma can put up a lot of damage too with AoE and fights, then you're going to get even more value out of it. So this is just a really simple baseline amount. And then you're getting 5% efficiency for every 25% mana regen that you have in there. So you're getting plus 5 AP on there. And it tells you right here, increased by 5.17% for every whatever. So if you get Athene's and then you get Redemption on top of that, you're getting an extra 30% efficiency there, because Redemption's going to have 150% mana regen on it. So 5 times 6 is going to give you 30% extra efficiency. So it's just really, really strong. Easily 200%, in the best case scenarios with Sona, with Karma that's doing a lot of damage. You could very easily get up to, probably pushing 275, 300% efficiency. It's just really, really strong. And this item's great too, because it does give you some defense. You do have some magic resist here as well, versus Ardent Censer is just all offense. So this is really good if you have a lane that's not going to benefit a ton early on from Ardent Censer. So if you have like a Jhin or an Ezreal or something like that, you just want to double down on the poke, especially if they're poking you back with other enchanters or just other things that are doing magic damage, and you're going to get a lot of value out of that resist, then that could be a pretty good choice. Okay, and then one of the final ones I want to talk about here, is I don't want this video to go too long, is Redemption. So when you combine this with Athene's, it's over 215% efficient a lot of times. And this is another one where, kind of sky's the limit as far as like how much power you can get. And this one is just, it's difficult to quantify. But I'm just saying that that the heal is basically HP, that it's about the equivalent of HP, which is not exactly true, because it does have a cooldown on it, so it's only going to be up every couple of minutes, and the HP doesn't scale with stuff. So like Mundo doesn't benefit, Warwick doesn't benefit. All these champs that benefit from real HP with their abilities aren't going to get that. But I'm just calling it adding extra effective HP when you get the heal off of this. So if you have 2 allies get healed for this, level 10, 410 times 1.15. So if you have 15% plus healing and shielding, Redemption plus Revitalize, that gets multiplied by 3. So that 15% becomes 45% extra on it at level 10 whenever you might buy this as a second item. Then it's going to give you about 600 total health if you hit 2 people, and that's about 1,600 gold. So that right there is basically approaching 200% efficiency. So if you just hit 2 people with Redemption, including yourself, if you want to do that, so 1 ally who might pay attention, plus you can walk in there, then it's already going to be 200% efficient, just by itself at level 10, with no other item stacking, no other plus healing and shielding. Then obviously that's going to go up a ton. If you have Athene's, it can distribute Athene's healing. It also does 10% of their max health, people forget this, as true damage. So if you're hitting like 3 enemies with this, and the combined HP of those 3 enemies is something like 5,000 health, it might even be more than that, then that's going to end up doing 500 true damage, which is basically going to, almost fully stack up your Athene's whenever you land it. So that's going to convert over to even more health. So you have all of these synergies that work with it. So it's just a really strong item. And then, obviously the dream scenario, you hit 5 allies and 5 enemies of people that are grouped up, in a tight choke point in the jungle or something like that. It's just going to be astronomical. I mean, I think I've done some math on this. You can get over 500% efficiency in the best case scenarios. But in just a lot of scenarios, it's going to be 200%. Now, the thing that's very good with this, at least 200%, it's going to be very good with this, it gets you semi-global pressure. So you can throw it from bot lane to mid lane, or you can throw it from bot lane into the jungle. So that's really good, especially if you have other global pressure things that you can do, like Soraka ult, Senna ult, and things like that. That can be really nice. Great for YOLO queue, where people are just running around, doing random stuff on the map. You can influence cross maps. That's really nice. Huge impact in team fights, obviously, where you're hitting multiple people. Scales really well with plus healing and shielding, and Revitalize. And then gives you lots of mana regen, which is very nice. A lot of champs are pretty mana hungry, and that does convert over with Athene's Unholy Grail, like we said, which is very handy. And then it also gives you some survivability. So kind of like Athene's, you are getting a little bit of survivability there. It doesn't offer any offense, so it doesn't have AP on it. Doesn't boost up the offensive stats of your. So it doesn't have the AP like Athene's, and it doesn't boost up your allies like Ardent Censer does, but it does give you some survivability. So this is really good if you know you're going into team fights. So that's why usually people get it as a second item, because it doesn't provide a lot of extra pressure in the laning phase, but it's really, really good in the mid game when you're fighting for, you know, that second and third dragon, the second rift, and stuff like that. It can be really powerful. So not a rush item on a lot of champs, maybe on Soraka, just because it is nice to double down on the globals. But other champs you probably want to get it second. But really strong item. The last couple items that I'll mention here, and we'll see if we can keep this under 40 minutes, is people are realizing the power of Shurelya's. Now, this one is not going to show up on paper as strong. It's just you got to kind of feel it out and read the game state a little bit here. But it's 119% base efficiency. It has more health than some of the other ones. But this is so good if you're in a meta with a lot of bruiser type of champions out there. It's a 90-second cooldown, so pretty short cooldown too, shorter than Redemption, shorter than Mikhail's, but it just, that extra speed is just so massive for running people down. If you have stuff like Darius, Garen, Aatrox, just all sorts of these kind of meatballs that just want to get in there and stick to people, it's so powerful. So if you have a team comp with that kind of stuff, or especially if you're really far ahead and you just find yourself just running down enemies a lot, it can be very powerful, especially on something like a Rakan who wants to engage. There aren't a lot of enchanters that would want this, that want to engage, but there are some out there. But yeah, if you just have those bruiser type of champs, it's excellent. So if your ADC is not doing that hot, your ADC is like 0-5, but your Darius is 7-0, or something like your Diana is 7-0, mid lane, just these champs that really benefit heavily from movement speed, you can get Shurelya's instead of Ardent Censer, and you're not going to have as much like high-end potential, but you're going to have a lot more practical power for that movement speed. Now, technically, if you are around 4 allies and you trigger this on everybody, you are getting to 500% gold efficiency for 3 seconds. So that is really, really good. Obviously, on someone like Hecarim or something like that who scales like really explicitly with movement speed, it's going to be super strong. But yeah. And then sometimes it just doesn't matter. If you just catch them and kill them, that's it. That's game over. So it's really hard to quantify just how powerful movement speed is. But it is very, very nice. So that one's situational. It can be good. The other pretty situational one here that it can be very strong is Mikhail's. Now, this is particularly good if you're going to get Redemption, because the 20% plus healing and shielding does, you get triple the value with Redemption. So you're going to get extra 60% healing with Redemption. And this is very nice on Soraka as well, just because she does actually get a pretty decent chunk of value out of the base healing. Now, it's not as much as she used to get out of that, because now she doesn't damage herself when she heals as often, because whenever you hit people with your Q, it doesn't cost you as much health to heal other people. But nevertheless, it's still pretty good. So this is great if they have a lot of CC. Ashe is super common right now, so Mikhail's is great on Ashe, or great to counter Ashe, great to counter things like Leona, Lissandra, Sejuani ult. Sejuani's kind of coming back into the meta a little bit. So a lot of these hard CC champs, Varus is still out there. A lot of these hard CC champs, Mikhail's is good. Now you do want to put this on an Enchanter that gets a lot of value out of plus healing and shielding. So Soraka's another one where she just has a really low cooldown heal and she just spams it. But someone like, you know, Lulu is not going to like this as much. You can get it, but Lulu only has one shield, one single target shield. Her ultimate does not count as a heal. It's just an infusion of health, which gets around Ignite, and that's cool, but it doesn't benefit from plus healing and shielding. So not as great on Lulu, but good on champs that have multiple forms of healing. Not as great on someone like Nami either, because once again, just one heal. But someone like Janna, who has a shield plus a heal, someone like Soraka, who can just chain heal a ton, then it's going to be really good. So situationally, it's great. Once again, very hard to quantify just how much that cleanse is, but if you think of it as your ADC doesn't have to buy Quicksilver Sash if you have this, or they don't need it as much, then that's going to add 1,300 gold value right to the price tag, and that's easily going to put you, you know, up close to over 4,000 gold, 200% efficiency. So situationally, it can be really strong. Anyways, that's going to be it for this video. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to check out the rest of the content. Like I said, I will have a link. It'll show up here in probably, I don't know, just a few seconds, with a link to the stream, a link to, you know, just some of the other content on the channel. So if you like this, be sure to like and subscribe. Check out the rest of the content, and I'll see you next time. Have a good day.